for sitting down, first of all, to be able to chat about our working relationship at Sonwil over the last several months. And I really appreciate, first of all, the opportunity to be able to work with you, to be able to make an impact over there. And I definitely appreciate you spending some time with me today, just to be able to talk about the impact that we've made together and where we see taking this. So thanks once again. So Jason, if I could just have you really quick, just if you could just actually introduce yourself and just say who you are and what your role is over there.
Yeah, for sure, Lionel. So thank you. Thanks for having me today. So my name is Jason Ickert. I'm the president of Sonwil Transportation and Sonwil Logistics. It's a fourth generation Buffalo-based transportation arm of Sonwil Distribution Center, which is a full-fledged 3PL. I'm responsible for a fleet of trucks. We've got about 53 tractors and 283 trailers. We haul in both the dry van and refrigerated van space across the United States and into Canada. And one of the value propositions that we have, especially in the state of New York and Ontario, is that we're able to run heavy, which means that we can run payloads up to about 65,000 pounds.
Okay, all right, that's great. So, Jason, if you could just even discuss the situation or describe the situation before we even started talking about potentially working together. How would you describe, the situation at Sonwil relating to recruitment of drivers and what your needs were?
Yeah, so I came to the organization in April of 2021 and took a look at our fleet and was really focused on wanting to maximize the efficiency of the fleet itself while driving up the revenue per mile and the revenue per hour of our fleet drivers. So we've got two different fleets that we run. We run local fleets and day cabs. Okay, so these are typically our shift workers. We run them three shifts a day, 7 days a week, and they're running near plant shuttles and mostly local day cab type of work. We also have an over the road fleet, and right now that's 17 power units that are running across the United States and into Canada. And so I wanted to really focus on the efficiency of the fleet and making sure that we were getting the most out of it. And one of the things I noticed as I was, standing, just even looking physically at the fleet itself, was that I had trucks that weren't moving, right? And I'd go there on a day, and I'd go the next day, and by about the third day, I'm like, okay, what's happening with these trucks? And we had about 5 trucks that just weren't seated, right? And these were the over-the-road trucks. And so I began to look at that and say, okay, well, how about the rest of the fleet too? Even our day cabs, how often are these sitting, right? Because if the wheels aren't turning in trucking, you're not making money, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
That was kind of a problem that I discovered, and I said, okay, well, what are we doing with driver recruiting? And so I took a look at some of the legacy processes that were going on, and I realized that if we continued to use those processes, that I probably wasn't going to be able to seat all of the trucks, that it just wasn't going to happen, that the flow of driver applicants coming in wasn't enough to keep the trucks seated on a regular basis. And so at that point in time, Lionel, that's when I reached out to you. Obviously, we've had a relationship for a number of years through the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, and I knew that you had some great experience with respect to driver recruiting in your previous life. And so, that kind of started a conversation about, how we might be able to go about it to meet the ultimate goal, which is making sure that our empty trucks are seated, and the shift trucks, the day trucks, the day cabs that we have, that we were, constantly turning the wheels in those, which means that we needed some drivers to slip seat.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot for the overview. And yeah, it was great getting the call from you. And I know things moved pretty fast once we had that initial discussion, right? To be able to, for us to be able to jump in and start trying to help move the needle over there. So I definitely appreciate that opportunity and that phone call back then. So looking, back at that time, were there other things that really stood out that, you had immediately recognized needed to change at all? Or was it really just, that overall flow of the drivers coming into the recruitment environment?
Well, obviously, when you're running a trucking company, I mean, there's a lot of different factors that you're taking a look at, right? You're looking at cost management and how to, reduce cost of operation. You're looking at revenue management and how to capitalize on revenue with the customers that you currently have. You're looking at ways to increase your customer base if need be, find the better customer, right? We had some help, obviously, in the market with that, going through 2021, now into 2022. But at the same time, with respect to driver recruitment, we are hearing all these stories about there being a driver shortage. And so, we were concerned. We knew that in order to be able to meet the revenue targets that we had, that we need to relook at not only the recruitment of the drivers in that process, but also the retention part of the process. And so, that also made us look at driver compensation and what we're doing there and how we're a little bit different in the marketplace than others may be.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely, when I look back at this, Jason, one of the things that I see that really stands out, all aside from what our team was able to do, it was really impressive to be able to see the impacts that you were making in improving the day-to-day lives of drivers over there, right? And just in terms of how they were treated, compensation, home time, other benefits that they may get. And, that I think is something that contributes to this, the so-called driver shortage, is that a lot of companies are, treating their team like revenue generating assets, more so than people and partners, right? That need to be respected and taken care of and compensated well. So yeah, definitely I'd recognize that right from the start, that you were making some really positive impacts there. And the reason that really sticks out for us is we need to take something to the market. And if it's ultimately a bad product or opportunity, it makes it very difficult. So the great thing for us is that in that sense, it made it really easy because we had quite a compelling story to be able to share with these prospective driver leads.
Yeah, we worked very hard. I mean, the trucking business has a hard side and a soft side, right? The hard side is driving revenue, driving efficiencies, managing your costs. The soft side is having relationships with the drivers, developing those relationships, making it a place where they want to come and work, whether they're hourly and doing shift work or on the road. And of course, you have to really kind of understand what the driver wants to get out of it, right? And so we did that through some conversations, but also some surveys, and really tried to get a good grasp on what makes the driver want to drive for Sonwil, and why these drivers that we've had for 20 something years, why are they still driving with us, right? And then how do we take that and make sure that same feeling that they have and have had for decades, that person who just comes into Sonwil can feel the same way, and essentially become ambassadors to other drivers, to drive for Sonwil. And we've had a lot of our most recent recruits, a high number of them have come from word of the mouth from other drivers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that again is a great sign that you have a great opportunity for people there. And from the marketing perspective, relating to that word of mouth topic, is word of mouth should always be your the strongest channel and most valuable, because they convert at the highest rate, coming in with high trust. So we were really focused on helping to create assets. So when they hear about you and they start to do some research, that they can actually find some compelling information about how the company treats its drivers, what the company's all about, what the opportunity looks like. So even though that's not necessarily going out and grabbing brand new leads, it's helping convert those really hot leads, at a higher rate for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about working with you, Lionel, and I've been pretty honest with you and your team, relative to this was, our ability to say, hey, this is our problem, right? Our problem is unseated trucks. Our problem is, we haven't yet maximized the efficiency of our day cabs. We're not slip seating these 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. And then coming up with a plan that allowed us to do so. And I think one of the things that made our conversation different when I've had the conversation with others, and with respect to, hey, this is our problem, what's your solution? You guys came to us and said, why don't we take a look at driver recruiting as the same way and through the same lens that we've taken a look at taking prospects to leads to customers, right? And so using some sales tactics that we're very familiar with, especially in the marketing and sales world, and translating that into driver recruitment. And I think that's the one thing that, when we started exploring that together, that really turned me on. And I'll tell you, it wasn't only just kind of a flash in the pan and bright and shiny lights that, I gravitated towards, bright and shiny objects. It's actually the thing that probably made a difference when a lot of the peers in the industry, I'm talking to them and they're like, hey, I've got this equipment and it's sitting and I can't find drivers and I'm hiring these recruiting agencies and we're not getting our drivers seated. I said, folks, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're approaching it like we would customer tactics, and we don't have a driver problem. And of course, we went from having a driver problem through this process to not having a driver problem. And now the new bottleneck is we don't have enough tractors for the drivers that are coming through the pipeline that want to drive for someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, thanks a lot for sharing that. And yeah, I definitely agree and see that as a really big shift in how you look at this. And we often talk about in the recruitment space that, especially with truck drivers, that it's not, or that it shouldn't be treated as a function of HR. And I don't mean any disrespect to HR, but again, yeah, it's really looking through it in that sales lens, right? And even, that trickles down to how you're communicating with the leads, right? Rather than just you're transactional and you're answering questions, that you're building a relationship and selling people and looking for the right fit for the organization and moving them forward, right? Just like you would in selling anything else. So yeah, so definitely thanks for sharing that. So looking back and without getting into too much detail, Jason, you mentioned that, a survey that we did. We did some work on how we're communicating the driver opportunity and built a pipeline and so on. Do you recall a certain moment where things were clear, or at least signs were clear that, hey, this is actually working? We thought that it would, but hey, things are clearly working. Does anything come to mind, Jason?
Well, I mean, after we did, some of the pre-work, right? I mean, I think that we came together and we agreed that, hey, we want to automate this process. And fortunately for us, we were already a HubSpot shop. So, I mean, we had a CRM and we said, okay, if we're going to treat driver recruiting like we do, customer acquisition, let's use a CRM to do that, and let's create a pipeline, and let's create some workflow, and let's create some automation and some templates and things like that. And I think that just that vision of seeing something come in, but of course, in order for somebody to get to know us, before they like us, before they trust us, and before they drive for us. We had to go back a little bit further, and we said, where are the drivers? What platforms are the drivers on? What are they doing? And where are they finding, the next best career opportunity for them? And then how do we go to where they're at and capture them and get them to know us, right? And so, I mean, it was kind of almost immediate. As soon as we turned on the switch to social media, which, by the way, it took a little while to get there. We had to create the landing pages, we had to create the story, we had to create the content. It wasn't a huge lift, but it was one of those things that you had to create something that was attractive to them. Almost immediately, though, as soon as we turned on the social media key and the engine started running, it was like, boom, here's an applicant, boom, here's an applicant, boom. And it was like, oh my goodness, this thing is, this thing really works, right? And not all the applicants were right for us. Some of them didn't have CDLs. Some of them were just, hey, I want to get into to driving truck, and so some of those conversations happened. But I think at that point, I realized that we were onto something here, because we were getting applicants and prospects basically flowing into the funnel and then through the pipeline. And I saw some of the messaging that went back and forth, and Lionel, you and your team did a very good job understanding our business, and then basically having the conversations directly with the applicant and working through them. Hey, what is it like to drive for Sonwil? What are the benefits of driving for Sonwil? What is the pay? What sort of schedules? What sort of runs will I make? You guys learned very quickly from us, asking the right questions, us giving you answers on how to answer that, and basically took that on. And so there's one thing that I like to talk about, when we're talking about our business, right? And our ability to automate and make money in our sleep. It was the same thing with driver recruiting. We created inbound marketing campaign that allowed us to basically recruit almost in our sleep with some of the workflows and templates and ways that we communicated back and forth to the drivers to get them to the point where they were actually filling out a physical application. We were calling them, scheduling them to come in and taking a test drive, and then hiring them.
Yeah, no, that's a great overview. And you talked about the automation and during this process, and that's something we really focus on is having an actual selling system in place, right? Where a lot of companies are only available when their recruiters are sitting by the phone, and it still amazes me, to be able to see applications coming in at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning, and you can somewhat understand that with truck drivers and their schedules and so on. But we're open for business 24 hours, right? And people can constantly engage with us. And again, without getting into detail on this, but you had mentioned the drivers without CDLs, and I thought we did some pretty clever things together to be able to make sure that the people speaking with the driver leads were really only focused on those quality leads. And when leads were coming in that were not desirable, it wasn't, chewing up their time. Right. And we were able to, set those aside and nurture them and move them towards maybe being a driver in the future. But at least it wasn't burning our valuable time right now of getting to those hot leads.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lionel. So, I mean, based on the flow that we had created, and if you're really running a good inbound campaign, you want to create an opportunity for the prospect to self-select themselves in or self-select themselves out, right? And you want to give them the information to be able to do so. And then once they do self-select themselves in, you want to be able to say, okay, we're going to apply some real people to this and some real people's time to this, which has a cost in an organization. Let's make sure that the time that they're spending with this prospect is or recruit is efficient, and make sure that that's the right person that they should be spending their time talking with, right? If somebody didn't meet certain criteria, we're able to weed that out through a chat or a marketing process, and said, hey, if you don't have a CDL, here's a list of CDL schools that are local that you might want to look into, for example. Again, not just saying, hey, nope, we don't want to do business with you, or nope, we don't want you to drive for us, but we want you to drive for us, want you to take these steps, and then want you to come back and let's have a conversation. And if you want to know what it's like to drive for us, even before you go through that process, we can give you some information in those nurturing types of modes, a note about, what it's like to drive for Sonwil, or what it's like to be a truck driver or whatever, so that you can make a decision if you want to go further and get your CDL.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And there's definitely lots of those people that we had discussions with that are pursuing getting their CDL, that are very excited about calling us as soon as as soon as they get it, right? So yeah, even though they weren't qualified, we still were able to provide, your team and ours, right? We're able to provide a positive experience with Sonwil, which is really most important in those early stages. So, one thing I would like to also say too is I would especially like to commend your team for how well they implemented our recommendations and the system. As you know, not everybody embraces change really well, right? And to be busy and the trucking industry is incredibly busy and highly transactional, but the people dealing with the drivers jumped right in. They embraced a new system with HubSpot. There's lots to be able to learn, but they were very quickly able to understand how to use the tool, what the advantage was, and the data in there is very clean as a result of their efforts that they're doing every day. So definitely, I highly commend everyone in your team that has been working with us, because they've really done an outstanding job.
Thank you very much. And, this was definitely a combined effort between, the both of our teams, really wanting to make this successful. I mean, change is hard. And there was a lot of change. This was a whole new process. It was a whole new process using technology. We digitized a process that previously was analog, and by doing so, we were able to scale the results. So, we learned a lot from this that is going to help us, not only with our recruiting and how we face new driver challenges, but we learned a lot that's actually going to help us with our revenue generation program here at Sonwil. So, there's a lot that can be applied across, the different functions. And so we're excited about that.
Oh, that's great to hear. So, Jason, given your position as the president over there and having, high level responsibility of and being, accountable for everything, can you speak a little bit about how this, process and project has impacted your role, even of managing people and being able to have insights coming out of the recruitment project? Like how what have you noticed of your team, in terms of improvements to their day to day, and then how does that help you in your role as president as well?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, just because we're able to use automation to manage this process and are able to have conversations early on with candidates in order for them to be selected in or selected out. I mean, that has allowed us to be a lot more efficient in what we're able to do. I mean, previous to having these tools and putting this process in place, we had, what would almost be a full-time type of recruiter just doing nothing but trying to go out and find drivers and have conversations with them and bring them in. And we've been able, through the process to not have a need for somebody, a full-time, but then have and actually, based on the number of conversations, physical conversations that we've had with people, we have a higher close rate on drivers because they get so far through the process before we actually are able to have the conversation with them. And then we're working on closing them like we would a prospect in a sale, and converting that sale into a customer. It's the same thing with the driver. When we do have a conversation with the driver, they've already checked all the boxes. They've already said, hey, I meet the minimum requirements. And so then it's been up to us to, have a few, ask them a few questions about mostly culture and what they wanted to get out of it, and then close them to come in and take a test drive for us. And, 9 times out of 10, if we can get somebody in to take a test drive with us and they're able to pass that test, they're going to drive for Sonwil, right? We do have a few that they meet up, they check all the boxes. We have a real nice conversation with them, but at the end of the day, they just can't drive. And, we've taken in a couple of those too, where we said, hey, you go forward really well, but you need some help. You need some work on backing up. So here's what we're going to do. And we put them through a little bit of a training regimen that allows them to improve their skill level where it might be somewhat deficient, pass certain safety tests that we feel are required before somebody takes one of our rigs out on the road. And if they are able to do that, then they can still drive for Sonwil. So, we actually work with that driver too, who may just, and we're willing to pay them while we teach them that skill so that they can drive. And we've had a number of drivers come back to us that we've taken through that process, and they've said, hey, thank you very much for giving me a shot. And these drivers are extremely loyal to Sonwil. And you know what? You need those types of drivers around the road. Obviously, they're taking an expensive piece of equipment down the road, but also you want to be able to rely on them wherever they're at, that they're doing the right things and they're doing it safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great overview of just your process in dealing with drivers. And obviously, I won't share your closing ratio, but that is definitely, when I look at some of the main metrics, the closing ratio is really very, very impressive. And you're exactly right. When you're in front of the right person, obviously 100% aren't going to be a fit at the end of the day, but when you're in front of the right people, you guys are bringing them in, at a very high rate. So that's very exciting to see you being able to fully maximize the whole process there.
And it's a lot of different factors too, right, Lionel? I mean, it's one thing with, recruiting in that engine, right? And that social media engine and getting them to know us. Then there's that like us piece where we have to step up to the plate too. And we have to say, hey, this is how we pay our drivers. This is what you're going to get out of this. If you're a driver during, doing day shifts, first, second, third, whatever the case may be, this is the rate that we pay you. And we actually have a career path too, where we say, okay, and then after this long, you'll get this much per hour and this much per hour. There's overtime opportunities and things like that. And of course, they want to know about benefits and longevity. A lot of the drivers, especially here in Buffalo, the local drivers, they're like, I don't want to change every year to a new carrier. And I want to be driving for you. I want to be driving on these accounts. I want to, feel as though I'm part of something bigger than myself. And so, driver pay, home time, obviously the local guys are home every single day. Our fleet, we've got a mixture of drivers on the over the road fleet who are home every other day. And then we've got another group that are home 2 days out of the week. So they drive 5 off 2. And some of those drivers, we've committed to them, we will get you home for the weekends. The weekends is when you want to spend time with your family. We will get you home. And we've done a number of different things to make sure that when they go out, that they're going to be home Friday night or Saturday morning so that they can spend the weekend with their family before they go back out on the road. And one of the other things with those over the road drivers, the ones that are out, every other night or out 5 and back on 2, we actually guarantee their pay. So that's gone a long way with respect to our ability to recruit, right? So again, it's getting them they know us, now they like us, is we guarantee their pay. And we tell them, hey, irrespective of where we send you, if you get into a bad shipper and you're going to dwell and you're not able to get your next load, that's okay. We're going to guarantee your pay. If we as a company are able to dispatch you really well and keep the wheels turning for 5 days, not only are we going to guarantee your base pay, we're also going to give you a mileage bonus. You go over 2,500 miles a week, and we're going to give you a mileage bonus, which is over 50 cents a mile for every additional mile. So those drivers now it was kind of funny to watch the look on their face when their paycheck come in and they go, hey, where'd this extra $300 this week come from? Right? Driver bonus. Now they're coming to us and going, hey, what route do you got me planned on this week? Am I going to be able to get those miles? Am I going to be able to get that extra, driver bonus? And so they're challenging us to put them on the road even more, to go out a little bit further, to stretch their legs so that they can achieve that bonus. So, that's the trust us part, right? So now they're beginning to trust us and they're saying, hey guys, I trust you to help not only get me home. All right. But, I trust you for the benefits that you provide to me as a company driver. And I trust you to do what's right, dispatch me properly. So I'm not spending a lot of time idle. I get my rest. I'm able to maximize my hours of service and I get the miles that I needed in order to get that extra bonus, because at the end of the year, an extra $300 or $400 a month turns into an extra $3,500, $5,000 a year.
Yeah, that speaks directly to the quality of the opportunity that you offer there, right? And as you know, there's lots of driver prospects that they reach out and they say, "Oh, I'm OTR right now. I don't want to do that anymore. I need more home time." And then we're like, "Well, hey, let us tell you how it works at some." And they're like, "Oh my God," like they can't even believe it, right? So it's just such a different lifestyle, right? And they're still able to have a high income. So. Yeah, that's a great program you've developed over there for sure.
You have to go and tailor it, Lionel. You have to tailor your driving programs to what the drivers want. All right, and if it's home time they want to be home every evening or every day, then we're able to tailor a driving role for that. If they want to get out on the road and they want to stretch their legs and get some miles so they can make some money, we are able to tailor a driving program for that.
For sure. So the next question I have for you is a little bit of a different topic, but as you know, anytime you're in a sales role, price often is an important factor, right? And, you likely come across a lot of other carriers that are hesitant to maybe invest in driver recruitment, or they're spending it in different ways than you would see, without getting into your actual cost per lead. Like, we're now at a point where we have that pipeline in place and we have our weekly metrics. We know how much it costs to get a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead and a driver hire. Just again, without giving the number, what are your thoughts even on just that overall number of what it's actually costing to acquire a lead and acquire a hire, when you look at, overall cost and can we afford it? Should we afford it? In that sort of context.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know in the beginning, right? We weren't really tracking that as a metric. We had an idea. That, a driver costs us X number of thousands of dollars, right, to recruit. And we had an idea of what the cost of driver turnover was, right? And so we kind of went into this saying, okay, but I will tell you, I knew exactly what my cost of that rig sitting in the parking lot and the wheels not turning were, right? And so I knew there's a huge opportunity cost every single month that those trucks were sitting. And so, we went through the process, and we actually started gauging how many dollars we were putting in to the recruiting process with you. And we began to really measure it. And what I guess the end result, and of course we're not to the end yet, but the end result was that, getting the program setting up and then administering the program, when it comes down to the cost per hire, we've seen it continue to decline, right? As we've been able to bring more and more qualified drivers into the pipeline. And it's probably right now, it's probably sitting at about 65% of what it was before. Right. So, we've been able to be more efficient with the dollars that we're using for driver recruiting. And because we're finding the right drivers through the process, the retention piece of it, right, and the turnover that we had before, I'm not going to say that it's non-existent, but we don't have a lot of drivers leaving us to go drive somewhere else. Typically, the retention issues that we're incurring are created essentially on the part of both us and the driver when we're releasing them for maybe a safety violations or things like that, right? So, that's the beauty of this. We've really just grown our driver base. We haven't had that same level of churn that we've had before, because we're getting the right drivers into the right seats. And it's not always about finding the right driver now. Like, so I always say that, you might be Mrs. Right, but you may not be Mrs. Right now when it comes to driving. This process allows us to actually find Mrs. Right and keep her in that pipeline and do some work with her and let her know that this role is available to her should she want to come in a future time. And so if we take a look at our pipeline, not everybody goes through this linear pipeline and they go into, here I am, applying today and driving tomorrow. It might be, I'm interested, but now it's not the right time. I'm making an application. I'm still not sure yet. Now I'm driving for Sonwil, right? And so that period might take a little bit longer, but the nice thing is the process that we put in place also applies to, finding Mrs. Right and then making her Mrs. Right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jason, what you described a couple moments ago about decreasing cost per hire, and just, knowing your metrics and being more intelligent and specific, with advertising. This isn't telling you anything you don't know, but that is very different than a lot of carriers out there, right? A lot of carriers, in short, a short description is they can't hire drivers fast enough because they're leaving, right? And they don't know what is actually working. So like there's lots of companies spending six figures on Indeed every year, for example, right? And our goal is to be able to because Indeed can be quite an expensive channel. Let's get our leads and have Indeed as a last resort, right? And then sort of wean ourselves off of that. So anyway, it's great to be able to hear, the results that you're seeing there, because it is very, counter to where a lot of companies are right now. And I guess if you were speaking to those companies that don't know their numbers, they don't know the channels that are working, and they're just spending tons of money everywhere in the pursuit of drivers, and they have lots of them leaving. Given what you've seen so far, what would your advice be to them of how they should look at this situation differently?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, here's what I would say to that. I'd say, different isn't always better, but better is always different. And so you have to take a different approach to driver recruiting. And it's both a data-driven approach, as well as, that's the hard side, as well as the soft side of really making your company attractive to a driver. And whether it's through driver pay or home time or benefits or safety or new clean equipment, whatever the case is. And typically it's a combination of all. There's no one single thing that attracts that driver to your company and then keeps them there. It's a number of different things that come in. So you have that hard data side that you need to really, pay attention to. And the nice thing about once you establish that data side, now you're able to digitize it, right? So, you have to be able, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if you want to manage it, you have to be able to measure it, and that's where the data comes in. But then, through the process of creating that measurement, then you're also able to say, hey, now let's take it from an analog to a digital environment, and then we can really scale this up. And so I think that's where we're at right now, is finding ways to spool that up. And drive the cost of driver acquisition down, increase the efficiency, increase the hire rates that we're doing, and like I said, we're probably at 65% of what it used to be in order to recruit and retain a driver. I would imagine that we can get down to 50%. So, for anybody who's taking a look at this and saying, hey, how do I fill my trucks, but, not spend a boatload of money doing it? What we've done is the way to do it. It's not going to break the bank, and you're going to be able to recognize the revenue and grow your company as a result. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for sharing that. So, Jason, just as we wrap this up, if we could even speak for a moment, just even about our own relationship, but if someone were considering working with us, what would you have to share in terms of our ability to communicate and deliver on our promises and help you meet your objectives? How do you feel that we did there, and what would your advice be to others?
If I was to take a look at what our experience has been, Lionel, I mean, I'd say you guys really served this up on a platter for us. The heavy lifting was really done on your part. We were able to do a lot of it just through some communications and having some Zoom meetings. Obviously, you came and visited us in Buffalo. We were able to get some video content and some things like that working. So you did a phenomenal job of being able to encapsulate what that what that day in a life of a driver is for Sonwil. And so that's been really important. But I think if we talk about the value that we were able to gain from this relationship, it's really invaluable. I'd almost say priceless. And it was done without us having to put a lot of the effort into it. I mean, it was your team who really did the heavy lifting. So we're extremely appreciative of what you've been able to provide us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Jason. And yeah, I have the same thing to say with your team. A challenge for companies like mine is having clients that are unresponsive or not open to things, even though they may have engaged us. But yeah, every step of the way, your team was really just a pleasure to work with and embraced things and took action right away. It wasn't something we had to call multiple times and multiple emails saying, hey, where is this at? Like if something needed to be done, we got it done right away. And same thing, your team did the exact same thing. So yeah, it seemed like quite a successful working relationship there. So once again, thanks for the opportunity to work with your company on this very important issue. And helping to be able to transform your business, because I know you have big growth plans at Sonwil.
We have big plans, Lionel, and I want you to be a part of them. So thank you very much for your help, and it's been good talking to you today.
All right, thanks again, Jason. I appreciate you sharing your experience so far.
All right, thank you.